Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jackson Cody. I'm a reporter with MassLive, and I'm here today with Northampton-City-Council President Gina-Louise Sciarra, who announced last week she's running for mayor of the city. Her announcement came after Mayor David-Narkewicz announced in January he won't be seeking re-election, having served close to 10 years in office. Council President Sciarra is the second candidate to announce she's running for the race for mayor. Social worker Shauna Fischel announced they too are running for mayor. Thank you, Council President Sciarra, for joining me. Could you first tell me a little bit about your background and why you're running for mayor?
Sure. Thank you, MassLive, and thank you, Jackson, for inviting me to talk about my campaign for mayor of Northampton. I am currently an at-large councilor for the city of Northampton, so I was elected by the entire city. I'm also the city council president and was unanimously elected to that position by my peers on the council. I'm in my 8th year serving the city on the city council. Before being elected at large, I was the Ward 4 councilor for 3 terms and was also previously the council vice president. I'm the chair of the finance committee, which reviews and makes recommendations to the full council on all financial orders and other financial matters. I'm also the vice chair of legislative matters, which reviews and makes recommendations on city ordinances. And over the years, I've served on and held leadership positions in many of the other subcommittees. For example, I chaired the committee, the Committee on Community Resources for 4 years. I was the vice chair of Transportation and Parking for 2 years. And I've served on many other subcommittees and commissions and advisory groups for the city. Still within politics, but outside of my city position, I'm the Ward 4 chair of the Northampton Democratic City Committee, and I very proudly worked on the regional campaigns that we've done to take back the House and recently the presidency and the Senate. And in addition to my political life and serving the people of Northampton, I also have a full-time job with a nonprofit called Pathlight, which provides services and enrichment programs throughout all of Western Mass for people with developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and or who have autism. Personally, I have a fabulous family. My husband and I have 2 children in the Northampton public schools. I'm a huge advocate for public education, and we've always been very involved in supporting our very dedicated, hardworking public schools, teachers, staff, and administration. And so I have a long history of serving Northampton, and so I'll say I'm running for mayor because I really have put my heart and soul into serving and learning very broadly and deeply about how our municipal government works. I believe wholeheartedly in public service and the power of government to serve the people. And nowhere do I think that's more direct and personal than in local government. This past year has been devastating, but it's also been a remarkable example of the importance of local government. And I hope that people recognize that. The position of mayor is one that requires a real understanding of the departments and the makeup of our government and all the facets of that work. And I have the experience to do the job, and I'm really excited to do it.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, this year has been tragic in almost every area, but also a reminder of the value of public service. And obviously a big challenge that will be facing Northampton's next mayor is the COVID pandemic and recovering from that. In your announcement about your mayoral campaign last week, you said helping lead an equitable COVID recovery is a top priority. What does that entail? Obviously, so many businesses in Northampton have been hit hard by the public health crisis, residents as well. Do you have a plan to help out these businesses and prevent more empty storefronts and bring more entrepreneurs to the city?
Yes, this has been a devastatingly hard time for our small businesses and restaurants. And of course, it's just compounded the real challenges that our changed retail economy has brought to brick and mortar businesses for quite a while. For some businesses, the pandemic has been sort of a final blow for them and they haven't been able to survive. For others, it's really sort of sped up an existing plan to retire in the near future. So there have definitely been closures. It's incredibly hard. I feel deeply for them. And also in these extremely hard moments, there can be a real opportunity and more possibility. I know that our downtowns can push through this time and be the strong and vibrant destinations that they've been. But I think we also have to really re-envision aspects of downtown and make some changes with time. I promise that I will always be in communication with our downtown businesses, and I will work with them to address their concerns, and see how the city can assist them. But I also hope that they'll be willing to work with me around some creative solutions, to make sure that downtown serves the community, but also continues to be an important destination point. I think we're at one of these key moments where we need to kind of push through to a next stage and make some important changes, and that takes bravery. But I think that this community always steps up when the time comes, and I think that we can all pull together to do that.
Absolutely. Another big component of the public health crisis has been helping at-risk demographics for Northampton and so many cities across the United States. That at-risk demographic includes houseless individuals who have been at particular risk throughout the pandemic. Mayor Narkewicz has announced various initiatives to help this demographic over the course of the public health crisis, from the launching of a new shelter at First Churches run by ServiceNet to the planned Community Resilience Hub, a shelter to support residents who face stress due to natural and human-caused disasters, climate change, and social and economic challenges. That's a bit of a mouthful. But how do you plan to help houseless individuals in the city if elected mayor?
Well, Northampton should be a place where, regardless of background or income level, people should be able to work here, live here, retire here, make their lives here. That's absolutely essential. We know that our housing costs are higher than many can afford. We also have very limited inventory. I've fought for affordable housing since I've been in office. And one of the most gratifying things of having now been in office for, 8 years, is that you're able to see projects from start to finish. So a project like the Lumberyard, which is family housing, was an incredibly gratifying thing to watch from inception to now. There are families that have lived there for a couple years whose kids go to school with my kids and are able to live in our community in a way that is affordable for them that we're not able to before. And that's amazing. But we know it's not enough. It's not even close to enough. I'm really glad that the city is addressing housing needs and affordability through zoning. In first reading last week at City Council, we passed 2 family zoning in zoning districts where it previously wasn't allowed. And that's to move us away from the idea that a single family home on its own lot which is not a thing that's accessible for everyone, is a preferred or only type of housing that should be built. Other zoning, today there's actually a joint hearing. So today, if people are watching this later, today's March 8th. There's a zoning hearing between the Planning Board and Legislative Matters on incentivizing the creation of subsidized affordable units and also smaller units under 800 square feet in more of our high density residential districts that are around the downtowns. All of these zoning changes not only have also the goal of creating more options for people, but they also have provisions and prohibitions on the use of fossil fuels that will help us with another one of our very vital city goals, which is to reach carbon neutrality. You mentioned the Resilience Hub. Now, the Resilience Hub is an extremely exciting and forward-thinking project that the city is undertaking to address equity and service. It will be a key component in how we help our most vulnerable residents on a daily basis. But also, it will be a resource for future climate crises or events or other emergencies like the ones that we're living through right now. A day center where individuals can go when shelters or other climate regulated spaces are unavailable is a top request of the people who are unhoused in our community. And so this is filling that need. And it's called a hub. You just, when you described it, you said it was a mouthful. It is a mouthful because it's a space that is going to do a lot of things. And it's going to be a space where people not only can come and, come out of whatever the weather is, but also can make connections with support services and build community. As I said, it will serve in times of immediate crisis like now, but also crises that unfortunately we have to be able to foresee because of climate change that we're already experiencing. I have served and currently still serving on the Community Development Block Grant Public Services Committee. And we always meet in March right now to talk about grants. And so it was a year ago that in that meeting, just as the pandemic was hitting and public buildings were closing, that we discussed that the Resilience Hub, which was a goal that we had stated was a goal that we wanted to achieve, but was going to be a bit of a longer term goal, was being absolutely fast tracked, and that CDBG, so Community Development Block Grant funds, were being prioritized for it. And it's remarkable what's been accomplished on this in the past year. I know that Mayor Narkewicz's office and the Planning and Sustainability Department and many other people are tirelessly working to get it up and running, and helping with that for the remainder of this year. And then leading that project, if I were to be elected mayor, will be a top priority and something that I'm really, really energized to work on. It's unbelievably important for our community.
Yeah, and you actually led me right into my next question, or sort of answered it already. But obviously, the Community Resilience Hub is one of Mayor Narkewicz's key projects before leaving office, and it'll likely continue bringing it to fruition once the mayor's office changes hands in January 2022. Would helping spearhead this project and bring it to fruition be sort of a top priority for you, and what would that look like?
It absolutely will be a top priority for me. And so, it'll, depending on at what stage it is at when that administration changes, will determine, what that will look like. And I'm hopeful that this, these next 9 months will bring us pretty far on that project. But I will support it fully, and I, pledge whatever resources my office can provide to continue that work, or help, keep it going, or to just support it and make sure that it's an absolute top priority for our community.
Absolutely. And you were mentioning before how this Community Resilience Hub will also serve to help shelter people who are most at risk of climate change. In your campaign announcement, you said that addressing the impact of climate change here locally in Northampton will be a top priority for your campaign. Recently, Northampton's climate change resilience plan was endorsed at the local level in city government. Part of that plan is achieving net neutrality by 2050. What's your plan to help get to that goal if elected mayor?
So 2050 is the goal for the entire city. The
entire city, yes.
Yeah,
I should specify that.
Because our city government, our municipal buildings have a sooner goal, which is 2030, to reach carbon neutrality. And we're, that's not that far from now, but we are working very hard to achieve that. And I'm not only am I hopeful that we can achieve that, my goal would be to try and reach it sooner if possible. And the goal for 2050 for our entire community it's just too far. It's by the time we hit 2050, if we haven't achieved some of these goals, we are in severe trouble. So I'll do everything I can to try and speed up that timeline. The zoning that I was talking about earlier has provisions in it for fossil fuel or fossil fuel construction, or saying that you can only build if you are creating the infrastructure in those buildings that will be fossil fuel free. That's incredibly important. And we need to do everything we can to move this timeline up, because our, obviously not just our community, not just our country, our world depends on that. So, I will be following that document, and we will do everything to not only meet those goals that are stated in it, but when opportunities present themselves to move more quickly or reach farther, we will absolutely do that.
And Council President Sciarra, another top priority of your campaign, you said, is addressing, racial and social justice. In the summer, in the wake of the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis and the widespread calls for law enforcement reform that followed, the Northampton City Council cut a substantial portion of the Northampton Police Department's budget, roughly $670,000. You and Mayor Narkewicz also then set up a policing review commission to study law enforcement alternatives and other policing issues and give a series of recommendations to the city by the end of this month. That's when they're set to submit their final report. The commission has talked about all sorts of topics, from police union contracts to how best to respond to mental health emergencies. What changes do you think should be made to the department, and what does your commitment to social and racial justice in your campaign entail?
Well, I think we're at a very important moment in Northampton of re-envisioning how we handle public safety. And I hope not just in Northampton, but in the state and in the nation. I so greatly appreciate the work the Northampton Policing Review Commission has put in and is still putting in. They have worked incredibly hard for months. I'm deeply grateful for the great lengths that they've gone to sort of dig into these areas that we've asked them to review. And, our request was to provide us with recommendations that are data-driven and are really based on our actual police department. I'm looking forward to reading their final report, which is set to be, delivered to us by March 18th. I know that they still are working very hard. They just had a public forum on Saturday. So hopefully they can meet that goal or somewhere near there. I really want to review their recommendations. I respect their process, so I don't want to get too far ahead of their report, but I'll say that what I believe is that public safety should serve all and that everyone should feel safe accessing it. And a lot of the testimony that we've heard is that not everyone does. An area that I think many can agree on, and I strongly agree with, is that it makes sense to move some of the many, many calls that the Northampton Police Department responds to a clinical support or a peer response support system or some kind of combination of those. And the most important calls, I think, to transition to that kind of system are ones around mental health, around substance use, around houselessness issue calls that come in. So that would be a priority for me. And there are existing models to look at. And so I'm really interested in the commission's thoughts on that and what sort of model they would recommend based on their careful study of our department. What's clear to me is that the police shouldn't serve as a social service agency. That's not their purpose. And it's really our failure as a country to fund and support social services. It's not even really a failure. It's actually systematic and very intentional underfunding and defunding of social services over the years. And so that's why these services have fallen to the police department. And that shouldn't be their job to do. So, I'm really looking forward to what their recommendations are and how they think particularly that area can be addressed. And I'm interested in what their other recommendations are.
Yeah, and that has been a topic that's been broached frequently at these Policing Review Commission meetings, is how to look at different ways to respond to mental health crises, emergencies, whether that's, like you said, a peer-based network or a clinical-based network. And that's actually been an area of change that Police Chief Jody Casper has expressed, optimism about, is alternatives or different ways to respond to mental health emergency calls. And it seems like that alternative is something, you'd be open to looking at if elected mayor.
I'd be very open to looking at it. And I also think it's something that the community agrees would be maybe, would be another approach, a more humane approach to some of these calls where really someone's, these aren't criminal calls. I think I would hope that as a community, we recognize that poverty isn't a crime, houselessness isn't a crime, mental health, shouldn't be criminalized, and substance use isn't a crime, right? So that that addiction isn't a crime; it's a health concern. And so, we need to have a better way to respond to these sorts of calls and concerns and people in crisis.
Well, Council President Sciarra, I don't have any more questions for you, but would you like to add anything before we sign off?
I guess I'll just add that I really look forward to talking to people over the course of the campaign. And anyone who wants to connect with me or our campaign, please go to our website, which is glsciarra.com. So that's GLSCIARRA.com. We'd love to have your support, and I hope very much to earn your vote. I look forward to having conversations with people in Florence and Leeds and Northampton for till election day. And our campaign will be interacting virtually, but also in person to the extent that people feel safe interacting, and we look forward to just connecting in different ways. But please reach out, and I just thank you very much, and for the opportunity to talk to you, Jackson, and I hope that all are safe and will be well. So thanks.
Well, thank you again, Council President Sciarra. For those just tuning in now, my name is Jackson Cody. I'm a reporter with MassLive, and I'm here today with Council President and mayoral candidate in Northampton, Gina-Louise Sciarra. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.